just like, yeah, Baruch Hashem. Okay, great. So first, let's do a little bit of a review. I actually find this topic quite fascinating, and this is the topic of reincarnation, the idea of a neshama, like a person who passes on and they do not finish what they were put here for. Okay, so one thing that you learn from that is that you are put here for a reason. Just the fact that, somebody has to come back because they didn't finish something up, that means that they had a job here. And so what we learned a little bit about the Gilgulim is if you didn't finish up your job and you have to kind of come back, it's because they can't even put you into, which is interesting, you can't even go into Gehenna, which is what we call rehab. You can't even get into the rehab center unless you at least accomplished who you were supposed to be. So that makes sense. And we learned a lot about Gilgulim. We said there's 3 ways that a person is a Gilgul. One, we said where the person really, like, you come back almost completely as that neshama that didn't complete its purpose, and that soul is put into you at conception. And then we said sometimes it's a soul that just a little bit is missing, and so you get a little like piece of that soul that kind of jumps onto you, sticks to you when you're born. And then we said sometimes there's something called a dibuk, which is a spirit that is really being punished. It's like flying from one side of the world to the other side, and there's angels that are sort of following it, and it's like freaking out, and it wants to find a place to rest. And the only place that it can ever rest is if it goes into a body. And that's what we said, or into an animal or into something. And that's what we said is the concept of an exorcism, right? And they said that there was such a thing in the time of the Chafetz Chaim where this girl was possessed, so to speak, and he had to do an exorcism and get the soul out. And those kinds of souls are usually very vulgar and they swear, and it's just sort of like lahavdil, to separate it from that movie The Exorcist, where she's like becomes crazy, and that's what we say is the exorcism. Now, what else did we say about the Gilgulim? We said since the time of the Arizal, which I looked it up, he was in the 1600s, so that's like 400 years ago. The Arizal already said in his generation that the people who were alive then, their souls were generally reincarnated souls. Now, what's the hard part of being a reincarnated soul? The soul's been worn, it's tired, it's a little less capable and strong, right? It's like, there's a Mishnah that says, when you write on a clean piece of paper, the ink is really absorbed. And when you write on a piece of paper that's been used and things have been erased, you know what I mean? And then finally you write on it, it's like
recycled
100%, right? So that's what they're saying. Like, you want to teach a child about Hashem and Judaism and his connection when he's very young, because then he's like a clean piece of paper. When you're trying to teach people who've already put a whole bunch of stuff on their sheet, and now I'm trying to add on Torah, it's a lot harder. Okay, so a recycled neshama is not going to have that same strength to fight a Yetzer Hara. It's a harder fight, right? It's tired, right? So if it was the Gilgulim 400 years ago, you can only imagine, like, we're kind of I hate to say it, the bottom of the barrel of recycled soul. Okay, right? Because it's like we've been around and we could have been around again. So now we're like, thanks Sandy for coming on. Now we're gonna have to really give it a good fight. So it's just good for us to know, like, sometimes you're thinking like, how is it that this generation is falling like to such a quick, incredible extent? And that's why we're fighting a really hard battle. One, the Yetzer Hara is fighting to the death, so he's going to work his kishkas out. What he wants to do is confuse you as much as possible, not let you know what your tikkun is, not let you know what you have to correct, which I am going to discuss with you today, is how do you know what to correct, right? So that's number one. And number two, it's a soul that's been used before. So usually when something's been used before, there's more wear and tear on that thing. So now when we learn about this concept of Gilgulim, it can help explain some of the tragedies that happen in our lives. So we said that rabbis, contemporary and of the past, like even Rav Moshe, who was in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, right? He said these ideas that when a person has a miscarriage, it's a baby that is a little Gilgul, a baby that dies young, a child that dies young. They're all Gilgulim. And they said they're Gilgulim of very holy souls. They're holy souls that only had to come for something small, right? All kinds of different little issues, but it was something small. And usually their death is a kapara. It's actually a forgiveness for the generation, for the people around us, which, helped me a lot with this Meron story. Like, 2 years ago, right? It was 2 years already. This whole Lag BaOmer story was a lot of kids who got killed, a lot, and very holy, good kids. Like they would be talking about them, one of them, as he was being trampled, he was screaming out, Hashem, I forgive everyone who's stepping on me. Hashem, I forgive everyone. I mean, you have to, to be a tzaddik, you know what I mean? Like a really, really righteous individual to be able to be saying that as you're passing on. And they were young, people who are 12, 10, 16, this, that. So, you're like, how could this happen? So how could this happen? There is a slight understanding, slight comfort, because it's tragic regardless, and it's hard and it's painful in this world. But if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, these people are Gilgolim. They probably were mitakein, they finished their tachlis, they're holy souls, and they were mechaper for us. You know what I mean? When these kinds of, that's what we say, a tzaddik dies for the generation. It's always hard for us to understand, but the idea is that when they die and you see that greatness, you realize the responsibility to fill that void. And they did what they had to do. They finished their job. So that's a good part to Gilgulim. And the second good part to Gilgulim is, like we said, that story with the Arizal, with this, like there was a poor boy and he came to the Arizal. He said, look, I'm really suffering. I need to get money. The Arizal said to him, you know what? I'm going to send you a letter with my haskama. I'm going to send that you are a very worthwhile individual. I want you to go to Egypt. I want you to go and collect money there. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to find your shidduch. The boy's like, okay, I'm going. Okay. So he goes to Egypt, and people see what a refined person he was. And unfortunately, he was on the road to hard knocks. He didn't have his money, but they appreciated who he was. And the fact that the Arizal even signed the letter, like it was like, whoa. So this very wealthy man has him become his son-in-law. He marries off his daughter to him. And then like around within the year or two, she passes on. And he doesn't understand, and he inherits a lot of money, but he still was very distraught. And he comes back to the Arizal and he asks, like, I don't understand. Like, maybe you could explain, well, how did this happen? So he said, listen, I knew who you were. I knew from Ruach HaKodesh that this girl was your partner in a previous life, and she, had stolen money from you, right? Had stolen money from you, and this was the tikkun. And now you got your money back, and this was the tikkun. It was just an interesting idea. So what do you see? First of all, you see the partner was a male and came back as a female. So that's important for us to understand. Remember, we said when you can be reincarnated, you can be reincarnated on all these different levels of life. You could be reincarnated as a rock, and then as a plant, and then as an animal, then as a person, and then as a Jew, if you have to. I mean, you can, you're rising up on these levels. So we said like things like the idea now in this time of year, we try to make a bracha on the trees, right? And we actually said that Gilgulim, many of them are in trees. So when you're going to make a bracha, like they say, the Sephardim, especially when they go out to make a bracha on the fruit trees, right, that are blooming now, we make this beautiful bracha, thank you Hashem, the trees are blooming. Sephardim will try to go where they see as many fruit trees as possible. And they will even say like a little tefillah, like, and please allow all the Gilgulim that are in the trees to be freed. It's an interesting concept, just interesting concept for all of us. Like, whatever you're eating, and like they say, when you pick your fruit, I know this sounds funny, you pick your fruit in no frills, like the fruit that you picked, it's a bracha to that fruit. It's a blessing. That fruit gets to really get a blessing on it, and this and that. You never know, what spark, right, of holiness or spirituality is in it. So these are the ideas, right, of the Gilgulim. So now, like, there's many rabbis, many people, they listen to these classes and they're like, okay, great. So there's Gilgulim and I'm a Gilgul, but how does that help me? Like, how do I know what I have to be mitaking? How do I know what I have to correct from this previous life, right? It's not like we're, it doesn't seem to come with this little, ticker, little sticker, right, that you get when you're born. And also, let you know, girl, boy, Gilgul, and this is what has to happen. So there are many great rabbis, great Mekubalim, great rabbis who studied Kabbalah, and they give you an insight, very nice, as to how you can calculate what it is that you have to mitaken in life. So the Vilna Gaon, he looks, remember we talked a little bit about last week, he writes this whole perush, a whole explanation on Sefer Yonah. And he really says that Sefer Yonah is really the story of the soul and the body. And it's interesting. It's like the soul is getting thrown. Yonah is the soul. He gets thrown into the water, and the water represents this world, because if you're not careful, you can drown very easily in this world. You can totally lose yourself. And the only way he stays afloat, right? The only way you don't drown is if you're in an aniyah, which is a boat. And it also says the word ani. What does ani mean?
Me.
So what does that mean? I can only stay afloat in this crazy world, let's say of this olam hazeh, right? That's where we're at. We're in this world. So how do we stay afloat? And it is nuts, okay? So many things are going on all at the same time. Like, you could take a break from the news over Pesach and you're so happy and so relieved. You decide, I'm just a little curious, click, and you're like, oh my gosh. Scary stuff, right? So how are we going to be able to stay afloat by ani, by being yourself? What does that mean?
Then being is also meaning poor.
No, being ani, but here I don't mean it as poor. I need as me with an aleph, So how? Yeah, but good try. So how is being yourself going to be able to keep you afloat? What do I mean by saying being yourself?
Your best self.
Your best self is what self?
Your soul?
Yes. By being your soulful, godly self. That is the only way you'll stay afloat. If that's where you're looking at the world, if you look through that prism, then you're in a much better place. If you're going to look through the prism of your, nefesh bahamis, if you look through it from your animal soul, you're finished. Okay. If you look through it from your godly soul, then you're going to be okay. Do you know what I mean? Then we can understand everything that's happening in the world is for the best, and it's all God's hands, and we're reaching something, and he's bringing us somewhere, and wherever he brings us, he knows what he's doing. Do you know what I'm saying? That's very different. And throughout that process, I have to keep helping him move history forward toward bringing Mashiach. And the way I'm going to do that is by doing what's right. Do you see what I mean? That's how you can stay afloat, if you recognize who you truly are. So it was interesting. The Vilna Gaon, he gives this whole perush, and he starts to talk about Gilgolim as well. Because you see, like, it's interesting when you look at Yonah, he was running away from what? What is he running away from in the story? Does everybody know what story I'm talking about? Yonah and the whale. You always read it, Yom Kippur Mincha. What was he running away from? Any ideas? Sandy, come on.
I don't remember.
He ran away.
He was supposed to do something.
Yes, he ran away from his mission. Okay. Now that's what we have to be very careful of. If we're brought back to this world, right? This is the Gilgul one more time. You do not want to run from your mission. That's the whole point. So now we go back to the same question. The Vilna Gaon goes back to the same question. He says, so how do you know what your mission is? So what does he say? He says, your mission is what you struggle with most. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so all the things that pull you towards the negative, you struggle with people who are angry on a dime. Their mission is to do what?
Control your temper.
Yeah, to control your temper. Like people who try to get away with this, well, that's the way I was born. I have a big mouth, so suck it up. That's not, so that's not, okay? The Vilna Gaon tells you that's completely the opposite of what you want. That's completely the opposite. So hard or easy? Hard. Yes, very hard. What do most people want to avoid?
Confrontation.
Yeah, they don't want to work hard on themselves. They don't want to confront themselves. We all know where we're lacking, right? We know where we're lacking. You don't want to confront it. It's like you just, sometimes people wonder, like, why don't we want to change? Like, people say, oh, I want to change. I want to change. But what's the truth? No, you
It's
don't.
hard work.
Yeah, it's hard work, and really you don't. And really, like, I'd rather eat my, a pint of ice cream if you really ask me. Like, I know what's good. I know what I really should do. You know what I mean? Like in so many ways, we know what we should do, but it's extremely hard to confront it and to actually like pull up your bootstraps and say, okay, that's it. We're fighting this one, right? So the Vilna Gaon is saying, if you find yourself like the Averas, like things that pull you, like you find yourself like, I don't know, you're looking at the wrong pictures. You're wanting things that you really don't need. You're very jealous. You're angry. You're, low sense of self, or you're always craving, like, I want a new car and a new this and a new that. And you're very materialistic, these, like, even these people like looking for perfection, all that kind of stuff. That is the stuff that you need to work on. Okay, that means whoever the soul was, whatever little, spark you have, that's reincarnated. It's you got to come back to fight this. Okay, so this is what the Vilna Gaon is saying. So he said, if you had to look at yourself, right, and you're trying to decide what is my mission, did I come here, right? Did I come here? If you have a big cheshek, like you have this big desire and drive for certain things that are negative, things that Hashem says, no, I don't want you to be. Some people, they need vengeance. Like it's scary. No, you could talk to people and like they need it. Like they're driven to take revenge. It drives them crazy that somebody else got away with it. You know what I mean? And they want to expose them. And you're like, chill out. Like it's not such a big deal. But that's the Gilgul in them. Do you know what I mean? That's the big taiva in them, like all the illicit, relations, like people who like had good wives, or even good husbands. Like I'm not going to just say, always, someone once said to me, it takes two people to cheat, a man and a woman. Okay, like we always like make it the guys, but there's somebody they're cheating with. Okay, so we have to realize, like people who are like really like it's a yetzer hara for them. We have to really realize that is the Gilgul in them, and that they were brought here for that. So this is the Vilna Gaon's Perush. Now, there's always got to be another opinion. Okay, so that's the Vilna Gaon's opinion. And now I'm going to give you the Minchas Yehuda. So the Minchas Yehuda, oh no, sorry, not the Minchas Yehuda, the Shevet HaMusar, the Shevet HaMusar. So what does he say? He says like the flip side of the coin. It's this is very interesting. He's flipping it. He's saying wherever you feel that you have to make a difference, like, you have a passion for good in this area, you have a passion for good. Like you're looking at it and you're like, I want to save, I want to give charity to the poor people in Israel who don't have food. And the other one says, I want to give charity. I think it's more important to take care of the women who are living in Arab villages who made a mistake and married an Arab. Like, do you know what I'm saying? You're pulled in these directions of even chesed, of even goodness. That's where you are supposed to make a difference. Interesting, right? So that's part of your mission. Like Hashem has kind of wired you, right? To feel compassion and to feel a pull towards this good. So like, it's an interesting idea because you know what, there is this concept, and my husband taught it many, many years ago. So like a person should pick a mitzvah, right? A mitzvah that they want, that they'll be known for that mitzvah. Like, so-and-so, she always benched with such kavana, so-and-so, she always put her shoes on the right way. So-and-so, she never talked lashon hara. So what is this idea? This is the idea of you are really wired towards a certain mitzvah that we need your tikkun in. So in other words, let's say this person, was lived 100 years ago, whatever, they were really, really good when it came to benching. 10 times in their life, They didn't bench properly. This is very hypothetical. So 10 times in their life, they didn't bench properly. All right. Or 100 times out of the millions of times, 100 times they didn't. And they're really like special. Hashem wants to give them their ultimate place in the world to come. So he sends somebody down who loves benching, who's going to take on this concept of benching, and they're going to learn about it, and they're going to sit there, right? Or they're just going to ignore that. You're always going to have the free will choice. Your natia may be, benching's such a cute thing, but then when it comes time, push comes to shove, you're in dreamland, or you've, gone someplace else. But the Torah is telling you, if you find that you get like a high from a certain mitzvah, like some people love to have Shabbos guests. I love to bake challah. I get a high teaching challah. I get a high baking challah. So what does that mean? It means that's a mitzvah I should really concentrate on. I don't do it. I should like learn the halacha better, learn to say the prayer with more kavanah. You know what I'm saying? Do you hear what I'm trying to say? Right? Like what the Torah is telling you, if you want to be mitaka in this, give it your all. Like, yes, you would like to go beyond, you would like to, and then you're working towards fulfilling that mitzvah. So now I'm going to tell you something I thought was very interesting. The Mekubolim actually say, do it with learning also. Like some people love to learn halacha. Some people love to learn, philosophy, right? And hashkafa. And some people love to learn chumash. And some people love to learn chassidus. Like if you feel yourself drawn towards learning a certain thing, yes, you have to learn a certain repertoire to know the basics. You can't spend your whole life learning it and not knowing how to pray or not knowing how to wash your hands properly, right? But you should pick the thing. Like she's not online, Sue Lazaro, but like Sue, my husband did this course, Sue and Kathy Vertesi, on Tanakh. Okay, on Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Beis, and then Malachim, and it was so detailed. It was so hard. It was like this king and this general and that general. It was a lot to remember, but they loved it. Like they were flourishing on it, and they wanted to do all the cahoots, and they wanted to study for all the quizzes. You know what I mean? It was something that was giving them a lot of joy. So Torah is telling you, if there is areas that you love to learn it with, like what they would say, it's geschmack to be a yid, like learn it with gusto. That is your mission. When you see yourself in certain areas, right, that you're pulled to, and those that you pull to that are good, go towards them with a lot of gusto. And if you're being pulled to areas that are very negative, go away from them with a lot of gusto. And that is what you were meant to mitakai. So it's not that we can give you like all the details of how, you came here and blah, blah, blah. And maybe sometimes you'll merit to see it, or, you get a voice from heaven, but the average person isn't. Okay. So the average person has to know by looking at these very basic understandings, which way they have to go. And really, Reishis Chachma, he writes, you really have to stop, and Mesilas Yesharim, they write and say you have to stop and map out where you're going in life, right? We're given a certain amount of time, right? Like 70 years, and then the Torah says if you get 80, that's the biggest bracha, you're a gibor, and many of us want much more, so you want 120. But unless you know who you are, you're ani, right? You're aniyah. You gotta be on this boat called self. And that boat called self is self-awareness. And sometimes people are a little bit afraid to become very self-aware. Like we're almost like a little afraid of it, like, because if I don't really know, then I feel like I get away with it, But really what's going on here is Hashem is saying, no, I gave you understandings. Don't pretend I didn't. And now sit down, with your head, really look at it and map out your GPS. So what do I mean by mapping out your GPS? So I love teaching you guys, okay? I love hashkafa. I love this stuff. So what does that mean to map out my GPS? What does it mean to you? What is your GPS? Somebody like unmute and tell me, what do you love to learn? What are you afraid of? Where do you feel trapped? If you want to share, it would be amazing. Anybody want to share? There aren't thousands of people who view this, so don't worry. It's not going to go all over. Does anybody want to share? Like, what turns you on in Torah or learning or mitzvah? Anybody here have a favorite mitzvah? Okay, guys, we're gonna have to really go through your Gilgulim. Class is for you. All right. Anything? Anything that resonates? Come on, Talia, I'm counting on you.
Well, I enjoy being creative,
Okay.
and it comes out in my art, and as well when I learn Torah, I like to think of creative ideas.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Perfect. All right. So then that's what part of your tikkun is. Part of your tikkun is to take that love, that creativity, and when you listen to Torah, to do what you do. You ask a lot of questions. You think outside of the box. You try to put different points together, right? This is part of your personal growth and your way of flexing your neshama. Is there anything that tempts you in life that really isn't such a good thing that you got to kind of fight?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I fight, so I'm not sure.
So
Um,
yeah, I feel bad. Like I don't want to put you on the spot. You know what I mean? I don't want to put people on the spot, but you have things that you have to fight, right?
yeah.
You know, anybody like just some people, whatever, some people it's hard for them to just get up. Like they're not so whatever. They're not so, what's the word, inspired to do things. It's really hard. Like people don't realize, like for them to clean up, for them to do this, for them to do that. Like that's a something you have to mitakein. That's something you have to correct. So it's like, again, we need to really be self-aware and to know, like, okay, so let's say I am. So let's say you are. Now you know you're creative when it comes to learning. And so what does that mean? It means you got to learn. You got to learn and practice thinking about it and asking people and doing this and doing that. And if you I'm not saying you, anyone is a big gossiper, right? So if you have to mitake gossip, then that means you better sit and learn Shmiras HaLashon and look at yourself and decide, where's this coming from? Is it because I have low sense of self? Am I jealous of others? Is that why I have to bring them down in the way I speak? Like, in other words, this takes analysis, right? Self-analysis, self-awareness. And then you need to take your understandings from the Torah principles, and apply them to these feelings, you know what I mean? And apply them and sort of see, like, well, why am I jealous? Well, maybe I don't have bitachon. Maybe I don't really believe that, God gives me what I need. You know what I mean? And right? So then I got to start to work on it. All of this stuff, is what you're doing right now during Sfiras HaOmer. This is exactly what you're trying to do right now, right? Is you're trying to develop Gevura. What's Gevura? Self-discipline, right? Right? What's Tiferes? Beauty and harmony, right? That comes when you recognize the things you do love to do and you actually do them, right? So that's what's going on when you're looking at this idea, okay? Now, so the Reishis Chachma, he gives everyone a warning. Like he's very serious about it. He's very serious about it. Like he really says, don't look at this and just, make light of it. You've got to really think about it because you do not want to come back. You don't want to be a cat. You know what I mean? You don't want to be a dog. You don't want to be any of these things, right? You don't want to come back. It's a hard trip to come back, right? You don't know if you're really accomplishing it. And like I said, it's a worn soul, right? So it's like a little tired, and yet it has to fight, like in this generation, a Yetzer Hara beyond any Yetzer Haras that the world has ever seen, right? Like we're in a really, I don't believe, we may have had a lot of strangeness once upon a time, right? And very different behaviors, but I don't know if we had this whole identifying as a furry and being a cat and like identifying, maybe that's what it means by a gilgul of a cat. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Okay.
Germany was actually, before World War II, was very liberal too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so that's another thing. So the Mishnah tells a story. So the Medrash Shmuel says in Pirkei Avos 2:6, it sounds like a very strange Pirkei Avos. It says a person saw a skull floating on the water. okay, which is not a very pleasant thing to say. And what did the rabbi say? Whoever killed this Jew, he will be killed. Whoever killed him, he will be killed. Okay, so what was the point of this? It's like a very strange story, because often you can see it looks like people are getting away with murder, so to speak. Right? It looks like people getting away with murder. Looking at these people who are the biggest Rishonim, the most wicked people, and they seem to be winning the game, and all the good people are like suffering like crazy right now, right? We don't get it. Like people, I was just watching, where was it? I don't know if it was in Chicago, but they just had, like, you know what they're doing right now is, yeah, it was Chicago, where they just went into the gas station, they went into the 7-Eleven or whatever it was of the gas station. Is that where it was in Chicago? It was just unbelievable. It's like this gang of hoodlums, like they're all friends, and they text each other. They come with the cell phones. I can't believe it. And they're like actually videoing it because they know no one's going to do anything about it. They put on their hoodies, they put on what's it called, the masks that people wear from Corona, and they go into this 7-Eleven. There was tons of them, like 30, 40, 50 people. They take their fists, they're smashing it through the windows, they're smashing it with rocks. They just run in, rob whatever they want. And the police just stood by because they just felt so outnumbered. There was nothing they could do. This is like, what's it called? What would I call this? Like pastime fun, like let's have a good time. We'll just tell you, meet me up at this place, and we're just going to rob the store, and walk out. Like, it's really crazy. So you could look at this and you're going to say, like, these kids are getting away with it. Like nothing's happening. So Torah is telling you here, no, that's not the case. That's not the case. In the end, everybody will get their just reward. That's what the Torah is telling you. And they will come back as a guilt. And if they didn't get it in this world, they're going to get it in the next, right? And they're going to get it. So it's not like, that's something that you need to appreciate, right? Right? Because sometimes there are incredibly wicked people who made the Jewish people suffer a lot. And guess what? Justice is a good thing. Do not think that it is a mitzvah to be kind to the wicked, because if you will be kind to the wicked, you will be cruel to the good. That's what the Torah tells you, okay? So he's saying, like, we have to realize, so what's going on? Everything will happen at its right time and at the right place and at the right moment. So this whole concept of Gilgulim, what is it also teaching us? That Hashem is very aware, right? And he doesn't live like us in a finite moment. He's living in the past, the present, and the future. So when he's orchestrating the world, he knows exactly what he's doing. And sometimes, like, what would happen? Like, it's interesting. Like, let's say take Hitler, Yamach Shemoy, right? What Hashem would do is he builds their success to a really high peak, so that what? So that when they fall, right, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. That's the great justice in the end of it all. So if you look at any of the nations that came after the Jewish people, what happened to them? They were always on top of the world. They were the greatest empires, right? Greek and Rome and Persia and this and that. They're the greatest empires. And then after they go after us, what happens to them? They
They
crumble.
disappear.
Again. You never hear of them again. Right? So this is like part of this whole master plan. Okay, so this is something we have to realize. So now I'm going to tell you the two phenomenal stories, like true stories, two true stories. One is with Rav Chaim Sonnenfeld. Does anybody know who Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld is or was? So Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld was the chief rabbi of Jerusalem before Yerushalayim was even a state. Okay, so he was, everyone respected him. He was the Gadol Hador, all right? So when he was young, this story happened, all right? There was a woman who was living in Eretz Yisrael, and she had money. She was married, she had money, she had two beautiful daughters. And what they took upon themselves, this woman, she told the husband, I really want to go to the yeshiva, where Rav Chaim was a bacher, he was a student at the yeshiva. I'm going to ask them in the yeshiva that I want to pay money for them to say Kaddish for people who don't have anyone to say Kaddish for them. Like sometimes people never pass away and there's nobody to say Kaddish for them. Either they didn't have children or the children couldn't care less. You know what I mean? Or there's no family. So it's a sad state of affairs. So this lady, she used to give a monthly, monthly check or whatever, banknote to cover the costs. And these people would stand up, they'd say Kaddish for all of these names of people that they knew, you know what I mean? They were buried. The Chevra Kadisha would have names, and nobody was there to say Kaddish for them. Okay, fine, beautiful mitzvah. Later on, her husband passes away, and his big business that he had folded, and she herself became a very poor person. So she went to the yeshiva, and she begged them, and she said, please, I paid you all the time to say Kaddish for these people. Please, please continue to say it. And one day when I have money again, I'll pay you, but please do this mitzvah. So the yeshiva saw she was so, what's the word, sincere. They said, okay, don't worry about it. We'll say Kaddish for these people. No one has to pay us. Don't worry about it. And so they continued saying Kaddish for, people. And when she walked out, after she was talking to the Rosh Yeshiva, she was feeling, she was so happy that they continued saying it. But then she just remembered her lot, like how not easy it was for her, and how, like, when is she ever going to pay them? Like, besides the fact that she's never going to pay them, she has these 2 daughters that she has to marry off, and they don't even have a dime to the name. And she's walking in the street, and this elderly gentleman, like with a very, what's it called, a very sophisticated look with a special walking stick. He looked like so sophisticated. He's looking at her, and he comes over to her and he says, excuse me, I see you look so forlorn. Is there anything I can do to help you? And she's like relieved, there's somebody there who asked and is caring about her. So she told over her story. She said, I was once rich and now I'm not. And my kids, I have to marry them. I don't have any money and all this kind of stuff, right? So the guy says, really? Oh, it's a sad story. And how much money would you need to marry off your children? And she goes, you would never have it. Like, it's a lot, like whatever, 10,000 shekel. I don't know. She said a number, really high number. And he says, you know what? I'm going to give you the money. And he takes out a banknote. And a banknote, and he writes his name, and he's going to sign it and all this. And then he says, but you know what? I want you to take this to certain bank. But when you're going to take this, I want them to know that you're not lying. So we're going to do this in front of people. I want 2 people to witness this episode, that I am writing this check out for you for this amount of money, and that you should take it to this bank. I want witnesses to this story. She's like, fine. So they run in to the yeshiva and they pull out 2 students, one of which was Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. So he was one of those eyewitnesses, okay, who witnessed this man writing out this banknote. Fine. And he says, go to this in this bank. She goes to this in this bank. She goes up to the teller. She shows him the banknote. And the teller looks at her and looks at the banknote, looks at her and looks at the banknote. And he says, you know what, could you wait here 1 minute, please? So she just standing, she doesn't know what's going on. He goes towards the president of the bank. He says, I want you to come. I want you to see this banknote. Fine. So the president of the bank looks down at the banknote, and he fainted on the spot. He was fainted on the spot. So everybody's like, what's going on? They call security, and everybody's like, what's happening here? So they call security, and they make sure the lady can't leave. And he's revived. The president is revived of the bank. It's like, I just, like, what's going on? So this lady said, what do you mean what's going on? I met this incredible, kindly gentleman. He was so sophisticated. He had this beard and this cane. He was such a special person. I told him over the story, and he told me I should come to this bank, and that the money is, and I even have witnesses that this happened. So the guy says, if I would show you pictures, would you be able to identify this man? So she says, yes, I just met him. For sure, I'd be able to identify him. So he shows her a bunch of different pictures, and then she goes, that's him. And the guy almost faints again. Like, he can barely control himself. So then, like, he's like, give her the money, give her the money. Okay, so they give her the money, and he, like, everyone's wondering what's going on. So he says, listen, my father, he passed away 10 years ago. He's the one who signed that banknote. And my father was a very holy guy. He was a wealthy man. He was a banker, but he was a very honest, good Jew, outstanding Jew. And I inherited the bank. I threw my Judaism away, actually didn't even marry someone Jewish. And the last couple nights, I had a dream that my father came to me in this dream. And he said, I just want you to know that I'm having a very hard time. You never said Kaddish for me. And it was very difficult for me. And I couldn't even, get to my lofty place. I've been sitting here waiting to be able to get into Gan Eden. I haven't been able to. But thanks to this woman who paid for people to say Kaddish, I was able to get there. And I'm so grateful to her, right? And he told him, there's going to be someone who's going to come into the bank with a banknote and that you should give her the money, right? So this guy, he was married to a non-Jew, right? So when he told the non-Jewish wife about the dreams, he kept having them for 3 days in a row. She said to him, you're an idiot. You're just like, you know what I mean? You're hallucinating. Like, don't even think about it. Do you know what I mean? But so here's a story. This is this whole idea of, life after life and what you do matters and all this spiritual energies and, do you know what I mean? And someone coming back and like, it's just, there's a lot of depth, right? To what's going on. And it's interesting because we're very connected. We're connected to this world and to the other world and to the people come before us and to this and to that. And our actions are impacting. And it's just important, you know what I mean? To be able to look at yourself and to say, things matter. Things matter, right? Things matter. Saying Kaddish matters. Making sure that somebody is buried properly. All these things, they matter, right? And it's something that we have to think about. Okay, so I just want to make sure I told you all the details of this.
Right? It's like no good deed goes unnoticed.
Yes. Okay, that was a beautiful Barb. First of all, big muzzle top to Barb because she became a booby. Okay, so everybody
Thank you.
shout out.
Sorry, I didn't know there was a class. I took off my makeup. And
Otherwise, you'd be on.
I took off my makeup 2 minutes before the class.
So funny. Not a problem. Not a problem.
Sorry.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, so now here comes a second story, another beautiful second story. And this one is more contemporary. This story takes place in 1953. Okay, so it's a very interesting story. So it's not hundreds of years ago, right? Or 100 years ago. It's pretty contemporary. So this is a story you find in the Lekach Tov. He wrote a book, and he says that this story came out 8 years after the Chazan Ish passed away. Okay, so 8 years after the Chazan Ish passes away, this man comes forward with his story, and the guy's name is Rav Yaakov Feldman. So Rav Yaakov Feldman is born in Hungary, in Budapest, and he was 16 or 16 before the war really breaks out, okay, before the Nazis move into Hungary. So he had a father, a very righteous man, very learned, very, good, very committed to his Judaism. And as the Nazis were coming closer and closer, this guy decided, forget it. I don't want to be Jew. I don't want to fall into this. I don't want to be known as a Jew. I don't want to be seen as a Jew. And he started just going away as fast as possible and doing the least he could do. And in fact, he almost really was doing nothing. All right. So the war breaks out, and guess what? It didn't help him. He ends up in Auschwitz anyway. It's not like he made it through the war. So not that he, missed that part. He Baruch Hashem survives. He survives the war, and he goes to Israel. And when he was in Israel, he decided, that's it. Nothing Jewish, eat on Yom Kippur, work on Yom Kippur, Chiloni Sheba Chiloni. I'm not gonna have anything to do with this. This was just a mess. That's all. I'm not interested. I'm not having anything to do with it. In 1953, he has a dream, okay? And his father comes to him in his dream. And he says to him, oy vey, ochen vey, what's going to be with you? I'm suffering, you're suffering. He says, you've done so many terrible things that your life is coming to an end early. You're going to have kores, people who eat on Yom Kippur. That's what I'm saying, in the Mishnah, exactly what she said. No good deed goes unnoticed, but no bad deed goes unjust, without justice. You have to appreciate this. So this father's coming to him. He says, you have to do tshuva. The guy's get away from me. This is just stupid. You know what I mean? He's not believing it. Then he dreams it again. Mishigas. And then he goes to turn the radio on Shabbos. And what does he hear? Achen vey, you have to do tshuva. Okay, now he's freaked out. Okay, this is not, he's totally freaked out. Okay, this is crazy. And he knows he lived in Bnei Brak. Like, imagine doing all this in Bnei Brak. It's hard to believe. In Rishon LeZion or something, he lives in Bnei Brak. And so now, after all this, he decides he's going to go. He's heard of this great rabbi that everybody talks about, the Chazon Ish. And he's going to go and tell the Chazon Ish the story and ask the Chazon Ish, like, what is going on here? So he gets to the Chazon Ish, and the Chazon Ish looks up. He doesn't say anything, like the man hasn't even said a word. And he goes, oh, it's you. And he goes, what? He goes, oh, it's you. You're the one whose father comes to him in a dream, right? He's telling you to be choser b'tshuva because you've totally lost anything about your Yiddishkeit. And he says to the Chazon Ish, like, huh? You know, I was like so shocked. Like, how do you know? And he just looks at him. He says, doesn't matter how I know. The point is you need to be choser b'tshuva. And that's it. And he looks right back down, doesn't talk to him anymore. And this guy walks out and he's like, ah! You know, like he's like, what? I can't. You know, and he runs out. Okay, so he runs out and first Shabbos comes. He says, okay, I'm going to try something. So he doesn't smoke the whole Shabbos. He doesn't go in his car. You know what I mean? The minute Shabbos is over, he can't take it anymore. He runs to the movies. You know, he wants to like this. What am I doing? What's happening with me? What's happening in my life? Comes home and he's still very perturbed by everything. Like, I'm going to die young. I have to do tshuva. Like, what is this? So he runs back to the Chazon Ish and he says, I need your help. Like, I'm so confused. So the Chazon Ish looks at him and he says, I want to know something. Why in the world do you deserve all this attention? Why would God let your father come and warn you? Like, why? Not very many people get that. You must have done something amazing in your life. He goes, well, you know, I'm a nice person. He goes, what? Like, he goes, like, I'm a nice person. You know, I always say hello. I'm very cordial. Chazon Ish goes, it's not enough. Like, you know, just because you're a nice guy, you smile at people, there's got to be more. Okay, not every nice smiley person gets their father to come and talk to them about doing tshuva and save their life. So what did you do? He starts trying to think, like he's going back in his mind, and he goes, listen, the only thing I could remember is that there was a very important, like a chashuv yid, a really, you know, special Jew. He was killed in the forest by the Nazis, and they left his body there, and everybody knew who this great person was. And at night, they needed a volunteer because it was life and death. Like anyone who would volunteer to go at night to find the body and bury it. Obviously, if a Nazi found them, they'd be blown to smithereens, right? It was like a very scary, you know, thing to do. Nobody would do it. And I volunteered. And I went and I buried him. And I even put like a matzeva, I even put like a little stone by him. That's the only thing I could think of. The Chazon Ish said, that's what you merited. That was a great act. And for this, your father is coming and telling you, you have to be choser b'tshuva, because if not, your life is coming to an end. And the end of the story, he was. This Yaakov Feldman, and he writes this story down. So it's just like interesting for us to know, do you know what I mean? That there really is a much bigger picture than the picture that we see. And I think we need to appreciate it. Like we need to appreciate it. We need to look at ourselves and to say, you know what, it's not just a trip. Anybody who wants to make a really good vacation, anybody who really wants to go on a good trip, what do they do for it? You want to go on a trip and you want to make sure, like you're invited to go to Italy, you're invited to go to Israel, you're invited to go to, whatever places you've dreamed of. So what are you going to do to make sure
you have to prepare very well.
Yes.
Plan for
Yes.
it. Yeah.
You're going to plan for it. You're going to prepare for it. You're going to know what is expected of you. How do you dress for this? What's the weather like there? What's the this there? What's the that there? What am I going to do there? How do I do it there? You know, do you see what I'm trying to say? The purpose of learning life after life is so you should know how to live. Live what? Here. That's what it's about. You need to plan here. That's what the Torah tells you, right? They call Shabbos Olam Haba. What does it say? Whoever cooks for Shabbos before Shabbos, prepares before Shabbos, will eat on Shabbos. So what it really means, whoever prepares and cooks in this world and prepares for Olam Haba, another word for Shabbos, will eat, will reap the rewards. So that's the purpose of why you're learning what we're learning. And why do we need these stories? Because these stories help to verify. Otherwise, this stuff would be so theoretical. It would be so hard for us to conceptualize and to really believe that it's true. So therefore, Hashem makes lots of near-death experiences or these kinds of experiences, right? Where people feel or hear or see or understand and can put it together. That's why Hashem leaves these stories for us so that we can go, wow, the Chazon Ish wouldn't lie. Rav Chaim Yosef Sonnenfeld isn't going to make stuff up. This isn't Harry Potter. This is the truth. Do you know what I mean? It's not fictional. So I think it's just very important for us to appreciate all that. Okay, so now it is time for the thank you prayer. All right, so we do not have a mita. Does anybody here want to read it? And I am going to, stop the recording. Here we go.